Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So we'll be at the page 143 tonight. Starting at the bottom, page 143. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 15th day of November 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga, the Yoga of Action. Text number 6 at the bottom of page 143. Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste Manasa Smaran Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Mityachara Sauchyate. Karmendriyani Samyamya Ya Aste Manasa Smaran Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Mityacharak Sauchyate. Karmendriyani Samyamya Ya Aste Manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityacharat sauchyate Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityacharak sauchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya Aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Yugal, you want to try? Okay. You want to try? No. All right. Not now. Okay. Vrindavan Lila. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya ase manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Bhajamangal. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mityachara sauchyate. Anyone online? Everyone who was online is here. Okay, word by words, just follow along. Karma Indriyani, the 5 working sense organs. Sangyamya, controlling, yaha, anyone who, aste, remains, manasa, by the mind, smaran, thinking of, indriya, artan, sense objects, vimudha, foolish, atma, soul, mitya, achara, pretender, saha, he, uchate, is called. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, one who restrains the senses by action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, one who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Purport. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation, while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So it's good to keep in mind what the goal of Krishna conscious practice is. Then we can see everything in perspective. So the goal is quite simply to remember Krishna at the end of life. Because as Krishna very nicely explains at the beginning of the 8th chapter, Yang yang vapi smadang bhavam jajat jante kalevadam tam tam evaiti konteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. That the predominating thought that you have at the time of leaving the body will determine your next life. So if you're making a show of meditation and renunciation, but at the same time your mind is absorbed in sense gratification, then that's going to be the predominating thought. That's where your heart really is. And in today's world, unfortunately, it's even more possible to do that in previous ages. You can be going out and being the most austere person and wearing all the robes and preaching renunciation. But then in the privacy of your own home or your own room or your own whatever, hotel room, you've got the internet, which can be a disaster if your mind is really wants to get into it. And you can see all kinds of things. You don't have to go, and you can be deluding yourself and deluding others. But ultimately, you can't fool Krishna. Because he's in your heart. Remember, yesterday I think we were talking about that. It makes it very clear. That Krishna is with us at all times as a super soul. And he's witnessing. Upadrashta anamantachar bharta bhokta maheshwara. Upadrashta means he's overseeing. He's conscious of all the things we're doing and thinking. Prabhupada says, somehow some of these things just stick in your mind. In the introduction, what Prabhupada talks about that is that the super soul is witnessing every thought that we're doing, that we're thinking, everything we're doing, and we should never forget that. That's the whole problem with Maya. We do forget that. We have to forget that if we want to try to enjoy freely without feeling that we're going to be punished severely. So you can't cheat the ultimate authorities. Krishna, there's another verse, Karmana daivanetrana jantu deho papatye striyapavishta uraro bunsoreta kanashya. That according to the Daiva, now Daiva includes the super soul, of course, but also all the other demigods who are overseeing our sense activities, and we're completely dependent on material nature, and integral to that material nature are these gods or these authorities who are overseeing the air. There's an air god, Vayu. There's a water god, Varuna. There's an earth god, Bhumi. And all of them together are creating our environment, both personal and climate. So this is the world we live in. And over all of them is Krishna. He's the ultimate Ishvara, the Parameshvara. Ishvara Parama Krishna. That's the first words of the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5 anyway, which is what we have. The supreme control is Krishna. Now we're also controllers to a certain degree. And every living entity has a control. I remember just listening to a lecture of Prabhupada a few days ago. Even the ant has this little sphere of influence, right? He's got a home, he's got a little life that he's leading there. Consciousness is very rudimentary, but it's there. And so this whole chapter is about how we can act in such a way that we can loosen the bonds of the material energy. Loosen the bond and make progress toward liberation. Not just impersonal liberation, but liberation in Krishna consciousness. And that means before you leave the body, the sense of being free from the bonds of the material energy, which works, as we learned in this chapter 2, through attracting the mind and binding us with a series of desires that we're trying to fulfill. in the material world. And ultimately, every time we enjoy something in this world, we plant another seed to enjoy it again. Isn't it? Why not? If it was really fun doing it, let's do it again. Let's eat this again and again and again, you know. But that just keeps you entangled more and more. These are called the ropes or the knots in the heart. And how can we cut those knots so that we're liberated? Not by trying to untie them or cut them one by one, but by tying our knots to Krishna. Replacing the desires for sense gratification with desires for serving Krishna, serving God. And that brings the greatest kind of joy, the greatest kind of happiness. Because ontologically, we're part and parcel of Krishna. And Krishna is Anandamaya Bhyasat. Why wouldn't God be always full of bliss if He's the complete controller? I would be, you know. But what's the most fun? It's not in, you know, controlling others and exploiting, and no, that's mode of ignorance. It's really in loving exchange. And that's why, wasn't there a song like that one time? Love makes the world go round. Forgive me, I'm showing my age. But that's true in a very important sense. Even on the material level, without loving someone, I mean, that's why I like to point out, you know, I'm taking my walk, and there's always a crew that's walking their dogs, and there's always some new people. There's one guy's coming up, you know, because sometimes the sidewalks are a little thin, you know, and here's this guy coming with two massive dogs. But this Cass Avenue is very good. They have this big bike lane, so I just say, get right in the bike lane and walk. There's no bikes, you know, and they can go past them. But that's quite an attachment. You know, the big dogs, little dogs, pets of all kind, what to speak of, you know, your children. I mean, there's a place for children in Krishna consciousness, obviously. But if it's just material attachment, that's a real binding to this material world. So here Krishna is saying that if one makes a show of meditation, karmendriyani samyamya, controlling the karmendriyas, you know, it's nice to have the little sankhya to analyze. We have knowledge acquiring senses called jnanendriya, and we have active senses called karmendriya. And they all have their objects of enjoyment, you know. So obviously, we have the eyes, the ears, the tongue, the sense of touch, sense of smell. These are well known. And they're all well known, but not in this category of senses. But also the active senses. For a devotee, what do you think is the most important active sense? The voice. Voice. Anyway, yeah, that's really important. And then when it's, you know, I'm then having a little trouble with my voice, it's really scary sometimes, but it's still going on. So the voice, the hands, the legs, the feet, you know, active senses, reproduction, excretion. These are our 10 senses, active and knowledge acquiring. So Krishna consciousness provides a way of actually engaging all of them in a mode of goodness and in Krishna consciousness. Beginning with the ears. The most important thing that forms your consciousness is hearing. That's why every classroom, there's a teacher and there's a student's hearing. And reading is really a kind of hearing. You're hearing in your mind. But it's actually even more potent to hear physically. That's why it's so nice devotees get together and read. Like I hear, okay, at 10 o'clock we're going to read upstairs, you know. That's nice. And I'm sure you're reading Prabhupada's books. What you read, what you hear, is really very, very critical to what your consciousness is. And that's why one of the regulations in Bhakti Yoga is giving up, very beginning of the second canto, it comes up. This is Shukadeva Goswami beginning its instructions to Maharaj Pariksit. The first canto tells you how the book came to be written. There's a lot of important instruction in there and very illuminating. But at the end of the 19th chapter, first canto, Maharaj Pariksit sits down, you know, and all the great sages come and to hear Naimisharanya, and Shukadeva Goswami comes and Pariksit asks his first question: what should one do? What should one hear? What should think of as he prepares for death? Because he had 7 days to live. He had, you know, it was programmed in. He knew that. So he didn't waste a second. He didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't drink. All he did was sit there and listen to Shukadeva Goswami. So Shukadeva Goswami says, right, he asked this first question, very nice question. Vadiyani shate prashna krito loka hitangkuta atmavit samatak pungsang shorta vyadasha para, something like that. And he's saying, very nice question. This question of what should one hear when he's about to leave his body is good for those who ask it, those who answer the question, and those who listen in. You see. On the other hand, because there's a lot of contrast. This is how you learn. You see, Krishna is speaking on one hand this way, and the other hand this way. Shrota vyadini raja ninangshanti sahasraja apashyatam atma tattam griheshu grihamedinam. Grihamedinam means those who are entangled in materialistic household life. This is the way that conditioning really works mostly, is with the simply, being focused on the family and the attachment for the children. It's necessary, obviously, but there's a way of doing it spiritually. Otherwise, that can keep you coming back again and again. So those who are Grihamedis, who are just materialistic householders and have no inkling of spiritual knowledge, they have millions of things to hear. Other than Krishna Katha, other than Bhagavad Gita. Isn't it? Maybe now it's 10 million. I mean, the internet is infinity. And this is one of the dangers. As I'm walking, half of the people are looking at their phones. Everyone's walking around. They're not really there. They're who knows where they are. It's a crazy culture. So Shukadeva goes on and saying, and what do these people do? What is the nature of their life? It says, Nidriya riyate naktam vivayena chabhavaya divachartahiyan rajan kutumba baranenava. Beginning of the second canto. So at night, sleeping too much, or indulging in sex, and then during the day, working very hard. And on the weekend, he doesn't use this word, but I've heard Prabhupada explain it this way. On the weekend, shopping. To support the family. Kutumba baranena means supporting the kutumba. Kutumba is the children, the family, extended family. So then what do we have for defense? It's a dangerous world out there. So he says, Deha patta kalatradi shatma saini shusatvapi tesham pramaton nidanam pashyan apina pashyati. So we have various soldiers who defend us against the dangers of this world. Now he calls them fallible soldiers. In other words, we place our faith in them, but ultimately they fail. So the first one is the body, right? Our own body, good health, working out. We can go down to the yard gym. She lives a block from the yard gym. It's and keeping the body fit, So that's one thing, a healthy body. And then relatives, especially immediate relatives, children, but also wider family, they can also help. Kalatra, wife and expansions, Adishu, etc. Atma Sainishu, these are the soldiers who will keep us safe in this dangerous world. But unfortunately, they're asatsu, they're fallible. They fail eventually. Tesham pramatta nidanam. Now this word came up last night I was explaining. Pramatta, mad. And not just mad, very mad. Pramatta. Nidanam pashyan. They've seen, you can see everywhere that these soldiers fail. Your own body fails, and your insurance policy, everything. It's a very, very rickety system of defense against the dangers. So, Tesham Brahmato Nidadam Pashyan, although seeing, they don't see. This is the famous, quote that Yamaraj, not Yamaraj. Yes, Yamaraj asked Yudhishthira, what's the most amazing thing in this world? And he answered, Aham nihani bhutani gachan dihi yamalayam sheshak stavan michandi kamascharya matak param. Day after day, millions and millions of human beings are dying, going to Yamaraj, But those who are left are acting as if they won't die, right? If we were aware of that, which is part of knowledge, and we understood the process of transmigration, that we have a future life, then we'd be much more attentive to planning for our next life, for our future. Not just for this immediate life, how we can suck as much pleasure out of it and then just what we hope is obliterate and we're gone. We're not gone. Nobody dies. That's a basic tenet of our philosophy. Nobody dies. Najayate mri, and no one's born. Najayate mriyate va kadachan. Now, if you really believe that, that changes, it should change everything about your calculation of what's important to strive for in this lifetime. Because it's not just a question, okay, I'm going to work hard in school and I'll get a good job and then you know, and I'll have a nice family, I'll be set. And everything's, that's such ignorance. And what happens is time passes. Time passes and that little, you know, arrangement you have, whether you're a billionaire or a poor guy on the street, time is passing and you're going to have to go to your next life. Well, what's that going to be? 10 billion billionaire, 20 billionaire. What did you have to do in order to get that money? To get that much money, you got to be nasty. You got to be exploiting people left and right. You know, sinful. So the culture, the Vedic culture here, is centered on the idea of leading a life in this life where you'll be promoted. Even if you're not thinking of going back to Godhead, you're living in such a way, performing sacrifice, okay, we'll go to heaven, or at least we'll get born in a better family. The whole awareness of transmigration should change our calculation of it. Of course, India is also becoming westernized now. You know, there's a lot of loss of, but that's what Prabhupada brought to us, and it makes sense. If we are eternal and our default or our original condition is one of eternal life, bliss, and knowledge, then wouldn't it be worthwhile to try to strive to regain that, if it's possible? And that's what Prabhupada came to give. He himself embodied it, and he embodied a whole line of realized souls who were experiencing it and writing and teaching it and giving it. And so that faith in that reality is what undergirds our practice of Krishna consciousness. And the wonderful thing about it is you don't have to wait until you die to experience it. You know, right in this lifetime, if you're really serious, you can experience so many of the benefits of Krishna consciousness. You know, I'm sure you must talked about how this will help you, you know, with your stress, right? Isn't that one of the words you use? And it's true. If you're living in a way that you're not dependent on, you know, the whole structure of sense gratification and all of its varieties and trying to compete for this and that, and you're actually enjoying, to some degree, in which is possible even in a conditioned state, not pure, the benefits of Krishna consciousness, the peace. We had our festival, periodic festivals. Prabhupada set up this movement in such a way that actually is a festival in morning and evening. This Mangalartik is supposed to be really, you know, not just the Mangalartik, the whole morning festival, whole morning program. And then the evening program. When I joined, we had, you know, 60 people in the temple or so, and then you had to be there for the evening program, which was like 7 o'clock kirtan, you know, and everyone was rushing around, taking a bath and getting the artik. And it wasn't like the morning. The morning, as we know, is very meditative. The lights are down, you know, and you're meditating on lotus feet of the Guru. It's 4:30 in the morning. I mean, you can be pretty ecstatic, but it's more meditative. But the evening, lights are up. Kiba Jaya Jaya Gora Chande. This song, which most people don't know, I don't know if I could even recite the whole song. It's meditating on Lord Chaitanya on the bank of the Ganges, and he's revealing himself as the Supreme Lord, and he's being worshipped by all of his, you know, his associates there. It's ecstatic. I don't know who came up with that melody. It may have been Vishnu John, you know, but it was just, and I remember so many of those evening artiks, just fabulous, you know. Then in class on the Gita, then everyone goes downstairs where we had the prasadam hall, and hot milk and Krishna book, you know, listen to Krishna's pastimes, you know, and then take rest. And the whole idea is that you'll dream of Krishna, and then you get up. And then I'll just tell you, there's on the wall of the ashram, I didn't know what it was at first. It was a verse that was, you know, painted on and mounted. Very nice. And what was that verse? Practically the last verse of the 10th canto, which gives a nice little summary of Krishna Lila. Jayati, and this verse, Lord Chaitanya would chant, one of the verses he would chant before the Ratha Yatra would start. Jayati janani vaso, devaki janmavaro, yadavada parishat swaya dorbirasyanna dharman. Stida chadavidinagna susmita shi mukhena vadapuda vanitanam vardayan kamadevam. Now, there's no way, I don't know who had memorized that verse, because there was no translation, it was just a Sanskrit. But somehow you're supposed to memorize it. But here's the meaning of it. Such a way to, wake up. Jayati Janani Vaso, all glories to Krishna, who is the origin and the resting place of all living entities. Janani Vaso, Devaki Janmavado, who is known as the son of Devaki. In other words, he's the father of all, but he's known as the son of Devaki. Yadavada Parishat Svaya, when he was in Dwarka, he had so many Parishats, so many associates, the Yadu dynasty. Dwarbarasya Dharman, and with his powerful arms, he destroyed so many inauspicious things and evils. That he is destroying the sufferings of the moving and non-moving entities, especially in Vrindavan. Whoever is there, they're living with Krishna and they're not feeling any of the pains of material life. Susmita Shimukena, and with his wonderfully beautiful smiling face, he's increasing the love of the gopis for him, coming out to the forest. So it's got everything in there, in a little summary for him. And so, and a wonderful thing about these, and just like the Hare Krishna mantra, all of these verses of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, they don't get old. You can chant the Hare Krishna mantra from here to eternity, and you'll just get more and more pleasure out of it, because you'll become purer and purer. It's not that it gets stale like some old rock song from the 60s or something. All right, enough. I heard that one enough. Can't get it out of your brain. But it gets stale. That's what happens with material things. Just like you have some nice food stuff, that you eat. Only half of it you put it in the fridge, but after a while it says, "Oh God, I can't." It went bad. Let me get at it. But the Hare Krishna mantra never goes bad. Nothing, about it. Like some of these ashtakas, you hear me chant sometimes. They never get old. Like this Kunj Bihar Ashtaka, there's several of them. And we chant every day, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, right? Kunja Bihari means he's who's enjoying in the kunjas and the gardens and groves of Vrindavan. And it's ever fresh. He's not, every day is new. I forget there's a phrase probably used in the Krishna book. Ever new. That's the whole idea. So how do we get from here to there? Well, acting properly is the thing. How to use these 10 senses in such a way, discipline them through the intelligence controlling the mind and controlling the senses, so that we hear about Krishna, we see the world as part of Krishna's energy. This is also part of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhuma Apa Olano Vayu, 7th chapter. He's teaching Arjuna how to see the world in such a way that you'll be reminded of Krishna all the time. Because we're not so advanced that we can see him in our heart and see him externally. Oh, you see the world, but don't just, when you drink water, remember, Rasa Homapsa Kontaya. Krishna says, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon. And when do we not see that? Every day. Of course, a day like this, you don't see so much, but you know what I mean. The fragrance of the earth, all of the senses are covered there, And even Dharma Viruddha Buddhishu Kamasmi Badashtarjaba. I am sex life. That's not contrary to a religious principle. Oh God, we got to learn those religious principles. Then even that will be blessed in household life. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's also something that can be dovetailed for Krishna. So that's the art and science of Krishna consciousness, and karma yoga is also part of it. Krishna consciousness is not antithetical to karma yoga. Karma yoga is folded within it. Karma yoga simply means act in such a way that your activities are all sacrifice. That's a verse that's coming up on the text 9 here. Yagyartart kamano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadatam kamakonteya mukta sangha samachara. Prabhupada makes a point that yajna is another name for Krishna. Because he's meant to be the object of the sacrifice of our activities. And what that verse means is that work has to be done, work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, whatever other work you perform binds you to this material world. You have to therefore perform your duties in that spirit, and you'll remain liberated, become liberated. Well, how to do that in such a way that you can also live in this world practically and exist? That's what we need instruction for. But that mood of being part and parcel of Krishna, his eternal servants, and always seeing ourselves, well, okay, there's a beautiful verse in the 11th canto. That's an expansion on a verse that it says, Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava nusadasvabhavat kadodi yadyat sakalam bodasmai narayanayeti samarpayeta. Whatever you do with your body, with your words, with your intelligence, with your hands, it covers everything. Then you have to feel and have to be real that I'm doing this as a sacrifice for Narayan or Vishnu. That means you walk from point A to point B and said, okay, I'm doing this because I'm on a mission for Krishna. I may be going to work, but I'm going to work to support the household, support the body, and give as much to Krishna, and then I can do so much service. In other words, you're conscious of that. Your every breath is dedicated to Krishna. That's pure devotion. But we can begin, step by step by seeing Krishna in the world at large, and trying to act in such a way that it's always within the context of performing some service or sacrifice for Krishna. That's how Prabhupada set the movement up. So any questions on this? Otherwise we'll be mityachara, we'll be pretenders. We don't want to do that. Okay, let's go on. Text 7. Yaschindriyani manasa Niyamyarapaterjuna Karmendriyai karma yogam Asakta savishishyate. So he's drawing a contrast. This word to, which is never at the beginning of a verse, but means but. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Purport: instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime svartagati, or goal of self-interest, svartagati breaks down as swa-artagati, the goal, the valuable goal of oneself, of the soul. Or the goal of self-interest is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show-bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. So Prabhupada was confronted when he came to America with a whole bevy of charlatan meditators. I just reread an article that I helped Amala Bhakta write back when he joined in 76 or 7. When I was in LA, he was my first yoga instructor. In the early 70s, I had a serious case of hepatitis, and I came out and I wanted to regain my health, and by that time I'd learned a little bit about Indian music and yoga. So I searched out a yoga studio. I was living on Long Island, the nearest one was in Manhattan. So it happened to be his yoga studio on the east side of New York. And it's a perfect illustration of this thing. And so I started, he was teaching there, and I was learning the asanas and so forth, but it was a little bit staid. You're in the 50s, east side of New York. There's a lot of middle-aged ladies and everyone who were trying to lose weight. And there I was, So I went to the west side. There was other yoga studio, and it was younger people, hipper people, Anyway, but Amala Bhakta, I forgot all the details of this thing. He became completely disenchanted with his boss, with the head yogi who had come over. who would come in, they would say, okay, you're in New York now. And he said, you have to rent me a penthouse for the next 2 weeks. And I'll hold my initiations. For I don't know, $100 you could get initiated. Didn't matter what you were doing, you could just buy an initiation. And so Yamala, after a while, he saw that, well, he's not the yogi that I remember from the book, you know, and he's just out to fill his pockets with this thing. You know, charge. He doesn't even know what you're doing. It's just some commercial. You know, Prabhupada, you weren't buying initiation. You had to meet certain criteria. Everyone knows, you know, the movement. You have to follow the 4 regs, vow to chant 16 rounds and all this. So he became so disenchanted that he wanted to leave. And he had already come in touch with the devotees, so he went across town. That was when he had the 55th Street Temple. He's on the 55th on the east side, say, you know, 3rd Avenue. And on the west side, you had the temple. And he went over there and he heard Vidyananda Maharaj speak. You know, in those days, anyway, he's a very powerful preacher and speaker. And he was convinced, but then how to disentangle himself from this? He told me how in the middle of the night, he had packed everything in one of those big Indian, you know, and he was dragging it down the stairs and he was afraid he was going to wake everyone up. And somehow he got in a taxi and went across town. From there he went to L.A. That's when I saw him. And the funny thing is, I was there in L.A. and he came up into I mean, those who know the layout in New Dwarka, where they have this gift store, they've had it now for many years. That was the prasadam hall at that time. They didn't have that gift store. They had no restaurant or anything like that. So we were taking prasadam, and there was Danavir. And Danavir Dasadikari at the time, he was the pioneer in so much bhakti making and training. You know, so he was a bhakti leader. So I sat down and I said, there's my old, you know, yoga teacher. I didn't know all the changes that he'd been through. As far as I know, he was you know, trying to steal our bhaktas. So I told Anu, watch out for him. Like, I know him from the yoga. Yeah. So he talked to him and he found out that he wanted to become a bhakta, which he did. And he got initiated and is doing so much service now still, you know, as a sannyasi. But the point was is that he had been hoodwinked by one of these bogus meditators who really saw a great opportunity in the innocent people of the West, you know, who were into yoga. And it's still going on the internet and everything. So Prabhupada wasn't like that. You know, he came over and he was penniless and he was giving the genuine thing. He did not accept disciples, you know, right off the street. You had to be trained, and it was a certain interval, 6 months or even a year. It was a year before I got initiated. And even when it would be most logical that he could have retired, you know, he had this very opulent temple in Detroit that was bought. Ambarish and Lake of Shrimanti bought that building for $300,000. It was worth 10 times that, and it was very opulent. He could have retired there or in L.A. He was even thinking that he could have write and everything. But no, you know, he had this whole field in India, and then temple, of course, the Juhu building, those who read that incredible book by Giriraj Swami. And, you know, Prabhupada was just, you know, staying up, getting up in the middle of the night to write the books and managing. He wasn't taking it easy at all. He was pushing to the limit. He's 75, 76, 77 years old. So there's no way that you could say that Prabhupada was trying to exploit the devotees. He was trying to get as much out of them for their own benefits and hook up. And he was doing more work than anybody. So that's what this mityachara means. You know, we read in the first verse we read. Mityachara means a pretender. If you're letting your mind dwell on sense objects, the whole thing is the mind. The mind has to be trained so that it can you know, be that the intelligence can be engaged in controlling the senses and used for Krishna consciousness. Not easy because the mind has been exposed and is now conditioned. So much in the chanting is so important. Chanting good rounds with great attention, and getting enough sleep, and all of these different things helps to realize the verses that we're reading now in the Bhagavad Gita. That, yeah, it's possible. You remember that progression we read in the 2nd chapter? Dhyayato vishayan pungsa, sangas teshu vijayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kama krodo vijayate, Krodad bhavati sammoha, sammoha smriti vibhrama, smriti brangshad buddhinasho, buddhinasha pranashyati. He's outlining in 2 verses the degradation of the soul by allowing the mind to be absorbed in the sense objects. Dhyayato, dhyayan means meditating. Vishayan, the objects of the senses. And by doing that, you develop an attachment. Dhyayato vishayan sangha. Sangha means association and attachment. And then comes this famous phrase that's often been lifted out. Sangat sanjayate kama. By your association, you develop your desires. Isn't it? That's what happens. Every mother and father knows that they want to know who their kid's hanging out with. Is he getting in with a bad crowd and developing bad habits? And So, sanjayate kama. By cultivating this attachment, you develop strong, very strong desire. Karma just doesn't mean sex desire in the lexicon. It means any powerful desire, And then eventually you become frustrated. You can't become fulfilled with that, and you become angry. Now that anger can be turned inward and turned to depression, and that's happening a lot these days. But this is kama, krodha. In anger, you may do something that you'll regret the rest of your life. Krodad bhavati sammoha. By anger, you become completely bewildered. You become a different person practically. Sammohat smriti vibhrama. You forget everything. Smriti brangshad buddhinasho. Your intelligence becomes destroyed, and you fall down into the material pool. So what's the antidote? Next verse. Raga dvesha vimuktais tu vishayan indriyais charan atma vashe vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. This is how you get the prasadam. Now we know what prasadam is, right? Prasadam is the grace of the Lord. So he says, Raga dvesha vimuktais, but those who are following the regulative principles of freedom, the principles of Krishna consciousness, Vishya Atma Vashe Vidhe Atma. Vidhi means the rules and regulations in the Shastra. So he says, then Raga Dvesha, you can be free of both attachment and aversion while your senses are moving amongst the sense objects. You're self-situated. You're not going to be whipped around by, Vishya Atma Vashe, self-control, Videyatma, by practicing whether the principles of freedom, prasadam adhigacchati. You get the grace of the Lord. Prasade savadukkanam hani, all your misery is destroyed, you become very peaceful and happy. So that key is that following the regulative principles of freedom. It doesn't just mean the 4 regs, it means all of in this verse, it means the do's and the don'ts that Krishna will give here and that we have in detail in our books. And that it's as Prabhupada said, it's a science. If you do it, if you follow it sincerely, you'll get the result. It's a science. If you mix the right amount of hydrogen with oxygen in the right situation, you'll get water every time. So if we follow the principles of bhakti as they've been laid out sincerely and pray for the strength to follow, then we can get the result. Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, well, good to be right behind you now.
What does Prabhupada mean by dry philosophy?
Dry philosophy? Dry philosophy, I remember dry philosophy because I hung out with the Ramakrishnas for a while. And it's the idea that the ultimate goal is Brahman. The ultimate goal is not Krishna or Krishna Bhakti. And they have this idea, which is very prominent in the Ramakrishnas, that it's, and in fact he told me this personally when he saw I was getting involved with the Hare Krishnas. He said, that's for the emotional masses. The real thing is Gyan. They like that thing, Gyan. Jnana, knowledge. Yeah. It's like imagine, how tasteless it is. That the goal is to negate your personality, is not to purify and be fully, and that we want to merge into Brahman, and that the perfect phrase nirvishesha. There's no details. There's no variety there. It's just peace. means the only thing close to it would be the sensory deprivation chamber. You know, there's nothing to see, nothing to hear. You're in an environment where you're floating. The temperature is perfect. You know, what peace. Uh-oh, I got to go to work. You know, you can't stay there. It becomes boring. Ye nirvindaksha vimukta maninas, tvayasta bhavat avishuddha buddhya, adu akutshena padang badandata patantado nadu yushmarangriya. Prabhupada quotes this verse all the time. The demigods are praying for Krishna as he's in the womb, and you know they're hidden in the dungeon there, Kamsa's dungeon. So besides your bhaktas, there are others, O lotus-eyed Lord, who are thinking that they're liberated. Ayasta bhava, they're averse to serving your lotus feet. They think it's just part of Maya. You know? In other words, Krishna's form is he's just a statue. Those are just ordinary words. Why, you know, you're just they think that we're being hoodwinked. You know? But this is spoken of Rupa Goswami in his Polgo Vairagya verse. You know, Vairagya is important. Any yogi feels that you have to get detached from the material energy and get, you know, free. So there's Polgo Vairagya, which is false or weak Vairagya. And what is it? How does it go? Prapanchikataya buddhya harisambandha vastanak means that even those things directly related to Krishna, his name, the form, the prasadam, the temples, everything, that's also Maya. It's made of the same matter you guys are worshipping. You've been completely fooled by it. You know, it's all Maya. That's what they call Maya bodies. Everything is Maya. But what do we want to do? We have to transcend it and come to the point of Brahman. And so the next part of the verse is Aruha Kṛṣṇa. The very word Kṛṣṇa. You know, there's so many. You know what an onomatopoeia is? A word that means what it sounds like. Splash. You know, there's so many in it. So Kṛṣṇa is a Sanskrit one, means with great austerity. And imagine trying to control the mind and senses without the holy name, without the prasadam, without the deities, without anything, just your own willpower. You know, sit alone in a room or up in the Himalayas and think of nothing, or think of Om, you know, impersonal Om. So that's what they're doing, and a few can transcend and go to Brahman and achieve it. But because they're averse to serving your lotus feet, they eventually fall down again. And Prabhupada would point out, like one famous impersonalist, he come down and he became famous for starting all these hospitals and everything. You know, that was his. But if it's all Maya, why are you trying to fulfill yourself in that? Because it's something that they can do, you know, and become famous. And, you know, it's not denying that they may have had a sense of trying to help people that way. But the real help is to try to help people get out of this material world and achieve, you know, real nirvana. You don't come down, you know, you won't come back from it. So that's what the impersonalists are into, and that's what it means to be, you know, Maya body means that everything is Maya. But Lord Chaitanya, he was able to even convert these Maya bodies, you know, because he was he went right into the Vedanta Sutra, told them what it actually meant, and converted them all. And once you become a devotee, you're not going to go back. If you get to be. You say, yeah, I was at the level of praying bhakti, but I gave it up and became a Mayavadi. I don't think there's one instance of that you can find. It's just not going to happen. All right, our little poem for dessert. Okay, quick. Uh-oh.
There are people who may have Haribol, there are people who may have preferences to live, let's say, in a particular place, any sacred pilgrimage place, in order to enhance their bhakti, or with their family in order to enhance it. And so are these also some sort of means attachments only? Means they think, or it can be even true that the certain environments will enhance their bhakti, or it will be favorable. So even these are like concussions, or not really? Means you can be in any place and still be okay.
No, there are places such as Vrindavan and Mayapur and other, you know, holy places where there's some temples of Krishna, and even the Leela of Krishna was engaged in it. So it's not, I'm not going to say, Prabhupada didn't say, no, it's very bad to move to, Vrindavan. But he said in Lord Chaitanya's movement, the injunction to try to spread Krishna consciousness is so strong. So what he intended to, with the Krishna Balaram temple and the guest house, and now there's the MVT, where in your older age, when you can't be as active in preaching, you can retire there, and that's perfect. And in Mayapur especially, he was thinking that he wanted a place where you could live and retire and leave your body there, just like Prabhupada did. That's what he did. And so no, there's no question of that being Maya. But prematurely doing that, trying to, just take up a Babaji position when the whole world is crying out for Krishna consciousness. That's not Lord Chaitanya's mood. We're trying to follow in his mood, and he traveled all over and he preached like anything. And he instructed his followers to do that. Yara Dekata Krishna Upadesh. And so that's the heart of this movement, is that being Krishna conscious and spreading Krishna consciousness. The mood of Prahlad Maharaj is ideal. I don't have any problems. Wherever I am, I can chant your glories and immerse myself in an ocean of nectar. But I am lamenting for these fools and rascals who don't know you. Shocetato vimukachetasa. They've turned their face away from you. They're ignoring you. They've forgotten you. Oh Lord, he's speaking to Nrsingadev. Vimukachetasa indriyarta. Here we're back with the indriyarta, with the sense gratification. Maya sukhaya. They're trying to enjoy this illusory pleasure of sense gratification. Bottom, and bearing the great burden of trying to do that. I'm lamenting for them because I have the knowledge by which they can, and I have to give them you. So this is the mood of the devotee, is that at a certain point, yes, retire and live in a holy place. Now, if you can't, you're not able to go abroad, then live in the devotional community, just like Alachua is developing like that, or so many years. They have now a devotee care facility that they're building right there in Alachua.
New Vrindavan is also there.
New Vrindavan has that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the way they're meant to be. So it's not Maya to do that. That's natural. But while we have some life in our body, we should try to become Krishna conscious and give Krishna consciousness. That's what will please Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya the most. Okay?
Got it.
All right, now we're really out of time. But one little poem. Sense pleasure is a dream. Krishna is supreme. The aim is prem, and the way is the name. We have a T-shirt. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.